My name is Rebecca. I'm the Community Development Team Lead and also acting as the Central Zone Community Developer. And I'm very pleased to hand the stage over to Monica Morrison, one of our CLC members, that generously shares her time, wisdom, and authenticity with the group. Monica.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're going to start off with the land acknowledgement. In the spirit of our journey to promote reconciliation, we would like to honor the truth of the shared history and knowledge, the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. I am coming to you from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Lenapehoik, and the Adan-Wandarum, and the lands of the Treaty 6, which is actually in London, Ontario, for those of you who have not heard those names before. So if anybody wishes to enter into the chat where they're joining from, please feel free to do so. As you already know, we are recording today's gatherings, so you've already had to hit that you acknowledge that we're recording that. So thank you very much for saying okay. As you can see, we have a very busy agenda. Thank you for Rebecca for doing the welcome. I am personally going to give you some updates, and then I'm going to hand it over to the team, and they're going to do the conversation cafe, look into the equity, diversity, inclusion, some more conversation, and then around volunteer recruitment and retention, which we all know is a very hot topic for all of us in the nonprofit sector. And then the team is going to wrap up our day. So I would like to first of all introduce myself. I am a volunteer board member on the Community Leadership Council. I am a retired executive director of the Golden Circle out of Red Deer, and I am currently an instructor for Red Deer Polytech, continuing education for ASHA in the area of aging and older adult fitness. And I welcome you all today to our virtual gathering to learn about Healthy Aging Alberta and what we have been doing, but also want to encourage you all to actively participate in the discussions that we are going to have this afternoon so that we can hear your voice in the needs and wants as we develop a sector to support healthy aging. We are excited to start by updating you on what Healthy Aging Alberta has been doing since our last regional gathering. It's great to see both familiar and new faces here today. If you are newer to our initiative, we will give you a quick overview of its purpose and how it's aimed to support you and your work. Healthy Aging Alberta is a community-led collective impact initiative focused on supporting organizations and community groups that serve and create opportunities for older adults throughout our province. Since its inception in 2019, it has been championed by the Minister of Seniors, Community and Social Services, and coordinated by the United Way of Calgary under the guidance of our Community Leadership Council. Healthy Aging Alberta's approach focuses on creating a robust and connected network of organizations that articulate the value of healthy aging, share knowledge, and build functional relationships within and across sectors. By supporting strong relationships among the community-based senior services, also known as CBSS, which is the sector, and other systems, we ensure that we are designing ecosystems with older adults that support healthy aging and well-being, and naturally provide the opportunities and services needed to thrive in their communities where they live. As I had mentioned, to guide this important work, a Community Leadership Council was established, which includes CBSS leaders and older adults from across the province. This group of leaders has continued to steer the strategic planning and stakeholder engagement that maintains our critical co-creation approach with systems partners while ensuring that the work remains community-owned and led. That is why your input is important, that we hear your voice to help design a system that works for all. I want to share with you our strategic 5-year plan. This past October, the Community Leadership Council and the Healthy Aging Alberta team came together to refresh the vision and mission of Healthy Aging Alberta and complete a strategic plan for the next 5 years based on all the input that we've heard from the community over the past few years. As you can see, the vision we have heard in. So this is our vision, that every older adult is empowered to age how they choose, ultimately improving their well-being and well-being of their communities. And the mission is that Healthy Aging Alberta builds upon and advances the work of the community-based senior serving sector through collective action, system change, and integration with allied sectors to benefit older adults. The Community Leadership Council believes that any strategic plan is a living document that must be consistently adjusted based on community guidance and needs. The strategic plan is new, and we would love to hear how this lands with you. At a time, I'm going to pass the floor over to Rebecca and her team to continue on with our virtual gathering here this afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Rebecca?
Thank you, Monica. So this is your regional community development team, and we're here to learn from and support you through a strength-based approach to leverage your community's assets. In this past year, Michael joined us and is covering Northwest Alberta, and Amanda came on to cover Edmonton. Sorry, Michael's Northeast, and Amanda's Edmonton and Northwest. And our sweet Marla took on her dream role, which was just slightly dreamier than being an RCD. And so we will be posting for new Calgary RCD. And as I have stepped into the team lead role, we will be looking for a central RCD as well. So if you know anybody, please reach out. Look at the next slide. Thank you. So the systems mapping was identified as an important step in creating a more coordinated sector by folks like you. The first version of this map was created in 2022, and we are currently gathering information for the rollout of our Systems Map 2.0 this summer, which you can see a screenshot of here on this slide. So this sector map provides a visual representation of the assets, opportunities, and gaps within our existing network. And if you've not already added your organization or collaborative's information to our sector systems map, please take a moment to take a screenshot of the QR code here, or we'll also be sending this out with the slides in a post-event email. And if you are unable to use a QR code, please reach out to one of our team members and we can do a phone call or email with you to get the answers to the questions. And again, we really encourage you to do this because being represented really matters. Really, thank you. Perfect. And so while not all of the organizations on the sector systems map are funded by Healthy Aging Alberta, there are a number of organizational collaboratives that are. Currently, we are guiding 3 key programmatic initiatives: community and home supports and rural transportation, through support from our friends at the Government of Alberta, and a provincial social prescribing approach due to the generosity of an anonymous trust. And so beyond spreading awareness of available funding, the RCD team builds capacity with communities to submit the best application they can. And along with our program managers, we walk beside funded partners, often troubleshooting and certainly celebrating with them as their projects evolve. And I'm going to hand this over to Amanda so she can speak just a bit more detail around these projects.
Thank you, Rebecca. So these funded partners are really doing incredible things to support well-being and healthy aging in their communities. And programs range from community kitchens, yard maintenance, culturally appropriate social programming. And this group has really faced quite a few challenges, overcoming issues around skilled labor shortages, geographical spread, data collection, lack of volunteers. But they've also really had some amazing outcomes. So now, if we take this type of work one step further and connect it to healthcare, we get social prescribing. And social prescribing is an approach that is starting to gain a lot more momentum here in Alberta. It's a more formalized referral pathway that connects healthcare providers to community-based services for older adults. And link workers receive a referral and they conduct a really holistic assessment with the older adult. And then they work collaboratively to co-create goals and create a care plan. They provide support and follow-up, and they also provide progress updates back to healthcare providers when it's appropriate. And it's really important to note that this relationship building is really essential in this role. So the link workers are really adept at drawing out an individual's strengths and their gifts, and they use this as a point of connection within the community. And they really walk with people through their journey. They often accompany them to activities, and they really take on that personal role to introduce them to others. And so currently we have 10 communities that are funded through Healthy Aging Alberta's social prescribing program. And we happen to have one of our social prescribing all-stars that's going to be doing a breakout today. And while this project is small in nature, and we really only have a limited amount of funding, we know that other social prescribing related work is emerging, and we really want to be able to support communities in any way that we can. So we have developed a 5-module e-learning curriculum for link workers, as well as people with similar aligned system roles. So if you know someone who could benefit from this training, please let us know. Our social prescribing manager, Beth, is also working on a toolkit for communities who are interested in implementing a social prescribing program. And this shared first iteration was shared with interested communities last month. Pardon me. Now, our goal for this project, the assisted transportation, is to develop a provincial approach to the coordination and delivery of community-based assisted transportation services for older adults living in rural Alberta. Phase 1 is already underway, and we're working with several rural communities across the province. And Phase 2 recipients were just announced at the end of last month, beginning of this month. And our provincial affordable and accessible transportation project is a great example of how Healthy Aging Alberta is working to amplify the voices of community-based senior serving organizations across the province. So one of Healthy Aging Alberta's goals is to establish a baseline of service delivery across the province. And we're currently exploring what needs to be in place in every community for people to age well within them. And we are looking for your feedback on articulating what a baseline of services provided by the CBSS sector to older adults in the community might look like. So this slide shows the different types of services that are provided by CBSS sector. And as you look at the categories of supports and services that are listed, do you see the work of your organization reflected here? And is there anything that is missing or that you think needs to be changed? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Michael to introduce our conversation cafes.
With that, yeah, so we'll be doing some breakout rooms now. We will be hearing from the Men's Sheds movement, as well as Protect Your Assets and Connecting People and Community for Living Well. So Stephanie will be opening up the breakout rooms. You'll have the opportunity to hear up from, you can only choose one just due to timing. However, after today's event, we will send out resources and some toolkits from what our speakers have, and we'll be able to send that out to the broader group. So if you missed a little bit, that's okay. We'll also be sharing contacts. So if you want to connect one-on-one, there'll be the opportunity to do that. So Stephanie, I'll get you to open up the breakout rooms, and we hope people enjoy. You'll have about 30 minutes to hear from your speaker and have some questions. So enjoy the conversation, and we look forward to hearing some feedback after. Well, welcome back. We're gonna move along to our next section of the agenda, and we're gonna have a conversation around equity, diversity, and inclusion. Um, we we did have a 5-minute break scheduled in, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to move through it. However, while we're doing kind of this opening conversation around equity, diversity, inclusion, it is a virtual gathering, so if you need to get up, turn your screen off, grab coffee or a bio break, please feel free to do so. And just make sure you stay comfortable throughout the rest of the afternoon. So without further ado, equity, diversity, inclusion. So we at Healthy Aging Alberta are committed to the EDI work. This is something that CBSS organizations have been advocating for, and we want to ensure that your voice is heard, as it's important to guiding this work forward. By understanding where we currently stand in our understanding and engaged with EDI, we can tailor our future discussions and activities to meet the needs and interests more effectively. This discussion was designed by Danielle Fraser of More Than Enough Consulting. Unfortunately, she had a conflict for today, so I'll be leading today's conversation. So a little bit about me, just to get folks maybe a bit more comfortable around the conversation. It's always important to be a little bit vulnerable, especially in discussions like this. So I'm a husband and an uncle. I really enjoy being an uncle because I get to hand my nephews back to my brother and sister after we're done having fun. I'm a cat dad, and that's little Angelina there. And so that's kind of the extent of my my chosen family. I've been all over the province from the far north to the far south. So my home and where I'm located today on Treaty 6, Bonnyville, Alberta. And I moved to Fort McMurray right after I graduated, did a lot of work in recreation, working with children and families. And then from Fort McMurray, moved to Calgary to pursue my degree and diploma in social work. And then I had a really cool job opportunity with a little organization called Healthy Aging Alberta. So made my way back north to Bonnyville to be closer to family, friends, my aging grandparents as well, and just provide some of that additional support around those caregiver supports. As I mentioned, social justice and community engagement are very near and dear to my heart. Community engagement, whether it was through recreation and working with families, or kind of in that social work lens of doing some of that one-on-one support. So I've worked with children and families all the way up to older adults. It's been quite a cool experience kind of moving along the lifespan and seeing what community is like in different cities. As I mentioned again, my background was in recreation and childcare. So the power of play is something that is really important to me, and the importance of play, whether you're 6 months old or 99 years old, we learn best when we're having fun, and we are often more engaged when things can have that playful nature to it. So that's always my approach to the work that I do, whether it's with family, friends, or in my work. So everyone here today has a diverse background, whether you're a single parent, non-white, gender diverse, or an older adult in rural Alberta with limited access to services and technology. We all have something that sets us apart from others. We learn, grow, and play differently, and these backgrounds shape our perception to the world around us. But also the world around us doesn't always shape to fit our needs and the needs of everyone else. For some, their diversity may intersect with other aspects of the world around them, creating roadblocks and challenges for them to overcome. Especially as we age, we become more diverse in terms of our experiences and needs. EDI principles ensure that older adults, regardless of factors like race, gender, or socioeconomic status, have their voices reflected in our work together, where all older adults have equitable access to resources, services, and opportunities. This is crucial for maintaining their dignity, autonomy, and overall well-being. When we were in Grand Prairie, a gentleman asked Danielle, how do we invite vegans to a smoked meat barbecue without changing the flavor of the event? What he meant was, how do we do this without the meat eaters still being able to enjoy barbecue while also making space for vegans to attend and not feel singled out? What a brilliant way of discussing EDI. You could tell that he chose this example in a very intentional way. Now, Danielle's response was that it could look like a lot of different scenarios. Maybe they do all come together, mutually respecting one another's food preferences. Perhaps they discover they all love the same barbecue rub, or maybe it is a few steak lovers teaching the veggie lovers how to choose the right wood chips for their smoker. Or, better yet, maybe they lend them the smoker to have their own event. It really is about asking what everyone needs and knowing that it is important for all the groups. And importantly, that all these groups are at the picnic table when these decisions are made about what the event might look like. Today, we'll have a guided conversation in breakout rooms, and we're asking all of you to reflect on EDI and what it means to you as an individual, your community, and your organization. We are in the discovery phase of equity, diversity, inclusion on our provincial scope, and what we hear today will help us to build tools and resources to support EDI with community-based senior serving organizations across the province. So we're going to break out into breakout rooms. Once again, we have 6 questions that we were able to work through, or 5 questions. 5 or 6 questions about EDI with our work with Danielle. And so we have actually assigned folks to the different rooms. And during that time, there'll be an Healthy Aging Alberta team member helping to lead that conversation and discussion based on that one question. The HA team member will be your note taker in the group, and your responses will be collected, and we'll be using this to inform our work moving forward. At the end of the discussion, folks will have about 15 minutes or so to really pick through it. And after that, your HA group lead will briefly share some of the insights with the larger group. And as I said, you've been assigned to the breakout rooms. And we did this just to kind of split up organizations a little bit and hopefully kind of randomize it so that we get a nice, broad and diverse response to some of these questions. So I will now ask Stephanie to open up those breakout rooms and have people filter in. And we're really looking forward to hearing what responses are to the larger group when we come back in about 15 minutes. Wonderful. So we'll open it up now to our awesome HA team members who help to lead each of the questions. We'll just start with question 1. Maybe if you could just read what the question was, and then maybe 1 or 2 highlights from the conversation. We'll give yourselves about 30-45 seconds to do that.
Thanks, Michael. The first question was, what are some ways to make communities feel inclusive, where everyone feels valued and respected? And a lot of the conversation was around making space for groups to share their cultures and backgrounds. So providing those opportunities where people can learn more and also see themselves. Increasing visibility came up quite a bit. That it's the most underlying factor and one of the #1 ways to improve DEI. And also considering physical spaces as well as part of that conversation. And it starts at a system level and also a grassroots level. So that was just kind of some of the points that were touched on in our conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. We'll move to question 2.
Yes, that was my group. And our question actually was, what does diversity look like in your community? And I think actually we ended up discussing more sort of what was going on in their organizations rather than maybe specifically what that looked like. And so we talked a bit about that it was sort of pretty minimal on that, like larger scale, what diversity looks like when you're talking about race and sexual orientation and that sort of thing. Let's see, that they were seeking opportunities to expand the communities that they worked with. And they were thinking about how they make their programs more equitable. They have summer students looking at gaps in policies around EDI. They were looking at translating content and materials, which is great, and partnering with ethnocultural groups to do that. We had an immigrant serving group with us, and that they felt that they concentrated mostly on the Black community so that they could feel at home with traditional cultural activities, but also believe they have a responsibility to be culturally competent to support other cultures and also connect with mainstream organizations. And I think we got most of it there. I think that was 30 seconds.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks.
Question 3, I believe.
Okay, that was my group. And question number 3 was, how do you build trust and connect with the diversity in your community? And a lot of our folks talked about the importance of listening to hear, not listening to respond, and that it's really important that there's good communication and that there is relationship building to build that trust and to be able to make those connections. There was a lot of talk about creating safe spaces so that trust and that connection can happen. Talking about having those safe spaces, which really is the environment where people are comfortable, because then those relationships can really build. And there was talk of trying to overcome language barriers, understanding cultural norms, what some of those cultural norms and expectations are, and being able to work more closely with that, and using cultural navigators or cultural liaisons. And the group talked about their team should be a reflection of the community that they work with to the best of their ability. I think that's probably
Wonderful.
my 30 seconds.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Amanda. Really, that theme of nothing about us without us, whether that's in community or management level, organization level, that's great. Number 4, read your question and your number 1 best point. They're all great, but you got to pick one.
That was my question. So ours was, are there communities you would like to engage with more? And we had some good points around there's gradual work that happens in this area, but there's always more that we could be doing, and we might not be doing enough outreach to groups that don't speak English as their main language or isolated from larger communities. So we need to be going to people rather than expecting them to come to us.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Question 5, group 5.
Oh, I suppose that's us. Okay, so we had folks were weighing in about, we've had lots of successes, but there was some issues with South Asian community adopting programming in some of the areas folks were offering programming. There was also a difference with rural versus urban, but with that, if you could find the right contacts in the community, it could come together a lot more quickly with buy-in. So it was really about who you partnered with to bring in rural folks to your programming. There was also a challenge incorporating different ethnic groups and cultures. The largest barrier was language and their capacity and the ability of staff to deliver programs and how to deliver it to low English older adults. So working in person directly worked better, and they started offering free programming 5 days a week. And then our last one, they are offering services for pet guardians. So they're dealing with diversity needs, with dementia, memory problems, and mobility problems. And I forgot to say my question at the beginning, but it was, what are some challenges you're facing in engaging diverse groups and making communities feel more included? I apologize, I didn't lead with my question there.
No worries. Thank you, Stephanie. And then I believe we have one more for our last question, number 6.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so the question our group had was, how can the network help you with your EDI efforts? And the two, I think, main themes I'll share. One is we talked a bit about unconscious bias and how that might be able to come into play. And then, well, okay, I'll say 3. And around that same kind of lens, an interest in the justice element specifically related to truth and reconciliation. And then the second piece that we talked about was the idea of having a toolkit. And we talked a little bit about what that toolkit might include.
Awesome, cool. And some futures thinking, what are we going to do with all this, that tangible piece, which is always important to me, I know for other folks as well. Thank you everybody for your engagement. I really appreciate it. And it sounds like we've had some quick but very robust conversations. So again, thank you everyone for that vulnerability and leaning into the knife a little bit, getting a little uncomfortable to move stuff forward. So now we're gonna jump right into our next round of conversation cafes. And so in group one, we're gonna have a conversation around supporting newcomer and immigrant older adults. And then in group two, we'll get to hear about social prescribing, that catchy word that we've been hearing so much from Healthy Aging and across the province. So once again, Stephanie will be able to just open up the room so you can choose which one you want to jump into. You can keep rolling. We're back on track and ready to go, which is wonderful. Next up, we're going to have Leanne Alexander provide a keynote conversation. Leanne is the individual who supports volunteer services at Children's Grief Center, Living with Advanced Illness in Rosedale Hospice. Leanne was a big hit in Okotoks, and so we're so happy that you're able to come and join us again today. And so I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you very much. That was lovely. A big hit in Okotoks. I love that. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Like you just heard, my name is Leanne Alexander. I am the volunteer manager for Hospice Calgary, which has those 3 centers of care that Michael mentioned, the Children's Grief Center, Living with Advanced Illness, and Rosedale Hospice. I've worked in volunteer management for about 19 years now. I've worked for Habitat for Humanity, where I managed 1,200 volunteers on my own. And I worked for the United Way for a little while, where I recruited and trained their public speakers, which was wonderful. And then now I work with Hospice Calgary. And I love working with volunteers. I have had amazing experiences. I've also had amazing frustrations. And I know that it is difficult out there to find volunteers, to recruit them, and like the second part of my slide, first sentence, how to retain them, how to keep them. 1 in 3 volunteers quit an organization within the first year, and we're going to talk about what we can do to once we find them and what we need to do to keep them and keep them volunteering with our organization. So if we can move on to the next slide. So this is what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk a little bit about the cycle of volunteer management or coordination, the 6 steps to a successful volunteer program. I'm going to deep dive into recruitment and retention, because if I talked about all 6 steps of successful volunteer program, I would need a lot of time, and that would be a lot of you listening to me. We're going to talk about a few examples and then have a group discussion and some questions and answers. Okay, so this is the volunteer management cycle. When we are recruiting a volunteer, it's not you find them, you get them on, you give them a job, and that's it, you're done. It is training, onboarding, helping them schedule their time, engaging with them, getting feedback with them, knowing that they're valued and appreciated, retaining them. And this is very difficult to do, but post-engagement, so when a volunteer does decide to stop volunteering, trying to engage them in that, get some feedback. Life happens. People sometimes stop volunteering for very valid reasons, but if it's a reason that we could maybe address, it would be important to know that. But it is very difficult to get that feedback from people. And then reporting. But today, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about recruitment, engagement, and retention. Okay. I am a big believer in role descriptions. I think it's really important that a volunteer is able to see what the expectations and what the tasks are going to be when they look into volunteering for an organization. So I'm going to use my world as a bit of an example, and I know that not all organizations are on the same, and I also want to respect that some of you might be organizing volunteers for your organization off the side of your desk, and you have a lot going on, and I fully respect that, but I understand because I've been there. But hopefully this can help you just kind of have these steps. So when I get contacted by a department at Hospice Calgary, so let's say our Children's Grief Center director contacts me and says, we are having an event where we are going to get a bunch of children who have recently had parents pass away, and we're going to do an event with them, and we're going to have crafts, and we're going to do all these things, and we need about 5 volunteers to help with the event. The first thing I do is I meet with that person, or at the least have a phone conversation with them, and talk about exactly what tasks these volunteers are going to be doing, and what kind of experience or qualifications they may have or may need for that event. And then I create the role description. Once I create the role description, I analyze the specific skills and experience and decide whether or not some might be unnecessary or maybe some might be missing. It's very important to be creative when you create a role description and a title of a role. Be creative, make it interesting, make it fun, draw people in. One of the main reasons why people don't volunteer is because no one asked them. They didn't know that there was an opportunity. I was lucky enough just now to be in the newcomers breakout group, and Mustafa was talking about volunteers that help his seniors with yoga. And I think that's amazing that volunteers do that. And I bet you there's a lot of people out there, yoga teachers, maybe retired yoga teachers, I don't know what, that would love to volunteer with seniors, but no one's ever asked them. They didn't know that they could use that skill. So be creative, think outside of the box. When a volunteer sees your request for volunteers and they've seen the role description and they're like, I'm interested in this role, it's very important that you respond promptly. Because if you make them wait longer, well, for me, I like to, if somebody's interested in volunteering for one of the roles we have, I like to respond within a day or two. But everybody has a different kind of calendar, but as promptly as possible. And when they reach out, be excited that they reached out. Be excited that they're interested in learning more about this role. Be thrilled that they have contacted you. And then connect with them. Send them the detailed role description so they know what they're getting themselves into. That role description should have how long the volunteer role is, what the shifts are, what kind of time commitment it is, where their location is. And so then they know that whether or not it fits for them. So next slide. So when I talk to the stakeholders that are looking for volunteers, we talk about the title of the role. I have had roles that is truck titan, weekend warrior, kitchen royalty. Make it interesting, make it eye-catching. And then the tasks we already talked about. What kind of scheduling expectations? How often do you need this volunteer to do it? Is it just this one event? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Make sure that they know. What kind of qualifications, whether they need a certain degree, or whether you offer in-house training, if there is a specific language that they need to know how to speak, and then how long they are expected to commit to this role. So some volunteer organizations require a volunteer to commit to a role for 2 years. There's a lot of talk about that. There's a lot of controversy around that in the volunteer management world. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer, but that might be something that's important to you. And it's important for them to know who is the point of contact. The way it works at Hospice Calgary is I'm the person who recruits all of the volunteers for every single event and program we have within the 3 centers of care. But once I do the recruitment, the onboarding, the risk management, I then send that volunteer to the person who is running that program. I don't know anything about the Children's Grief Center except for the amazing work they do. But the person who runs those programs does. So that would be the person who is the point of contact. And then I am always the indirect point of contact for the volunteer. The volunteer needs to have a place where they feel that they can be heard if they have any concerns, questions, or support if they're having a difficult time with their role. So next one. Sorry, we don't have tables here, so there's no examples on your tables. So we talked a lot about role descriptions. As you can see, I am a big believer in them. We need them because we need to have clear communication. Volunteers need to know what's going on, transparency of the organization. We're not trying to pull anything over them. We know this is what we need, and they know this is what we expect. It is professional standards in volunteer management that all volunteer roles have a description. Again, kept to required expectations. So the volunteer is made very clear what is expected of them in their role. And then if for some reason they're not doing that, then you can have an easier conversation because they were at the beginning understanding about the expectations. Tracking how things are going, and role descriptions are a large part of risk management. And when do we need them? We need them whenever we have a role. When someone inquires about the role, I send mine before I interview for the volunteers to make sure that the communication is crystal clear. During the interview, I refer and base my questions around the description. And then it's important when the tasks are not being met by the volunteer. If you need to have a difficult conversation with them, they're asked to show up at 5 o'clock and be there for 3 hours during the event or a weekly event or what have you, and they keep showing up at 6 and leaving at 7:30. That can be addressed a little bit easier because it was made clear at the beginning. So next slide. Where do we find volunteers? So when I originally got asked to speak in Okotoks and then asked to speak here, one of the reasons why is because, well, the truth is I am really good at finding volunteers for the organizations I work for, but I don't believe it's a secret or something that makes me more special than anyone else. I think it has to do with the passion that I have for the work that I do. And if I can refer to Mustafa again, and I only heard him speak for 10 minutes, but the passion that he has for his organization and the amazing work that they're doing for newcomers and seniors, it was just oozing out of him as he spoke. And that made me go, what organization is this? Do I know people who are looking for this? Do I want to volunteer for this organization? So it's about being passionate. So be creative is one of the important things. So I'm going to give a massage therapist example, as you can see there. So when I worked at Habitat for Humanity, there was a large event that happened once a year called Ride Through the Rockies, where we had 30 cyclists ride 400 kilometers on their bikes through the Rocky Mountains in 3 days. And we would stay at a hotel in Kananaskis. Oh gosh, it was exhausting, but it was really exciting and really fun. And they raised a lot of money for Habitat for Humanity. And one year, the person from the company who was doing this event for us said, we need to find massage therapist volunteers. What? Like, okay, where do I find massage therapists? So I had to be creative. I had to think outside of the box and go, okay, so obviously I can reach out to massage places. I can ask my friends if anyone knows a massage therapist that would like to volunteer. And I didn't have a lot of luck. And then I started thinking about, what about massage therapy schools? I reached out to the schools and found out that they're in the massage therapist program. They do need to have some volunteer hours to get certified as a massage therapist. So I was able to find massage therapists through the schools. And it took me a little while to think of that idea, but there's always something creative you can think of. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Google is your friend. Literally, if you Google how to find volunteers in Cochrane or in Didsbury or wherever it may be, you're going to get stuff that comes up. Some of it will be helpful, some of it might not be helpful. Probably the number one way I recruit volunteers is through Volunteer Connector. If you do not know about Volunteer Connector, your life is going to change today. Volunteer Connector, it used to be called Volunteer Calgary, but Volunteer Connector is a free database to nonprofit organizations that you can post your volunteer opportunities, and it is Alberta-wide. So if you're looking for people to help with an event, or you're looking for a regular weekly volunteer, it doesn't matter. And it is absolutely free for a nonprofit organization to get a membership and post unlimited amount of opportunities. That is the number one way I find volunteers. Volley is a free website to post opportunities as well. Volley is run 100% by volunteers, and it's good. It just hasn't been around as long as Volunteer Connector, so I don't believe that as many people know it's there for the people who are looking to find a volunteer opportunity. Volunteer Success is very, very new, but again, it's another place to post opportunities, and it's also free. Another place that is great to find volunteers is post-secondary student volunteer boards. In my current role at Hospice Calgary, one of the best places I have found volunteers to work with our patients at the hospice is the Bow Valley Healthcare Aid Program. So I reached out to the director of that program and talked about what I was looking for, and got flooded by students who wanted to volunteer to get their experience and be part of that environment while they're studying to be a healthcare aide. Does your organization have social media? Advocate for your social media to post the different volunteer opportunities when you have some available. If you have social media, make sure that people know that you are looking for volunteers, because the best place to find local volunteers is people who already love you. So if there's people who are following you on social media, do they know that you utilize volunteers? If they don't, make sure they know. Because if they already are invested in your organization and all of a sudden they're like, oh, they're looking for a receptionist to do desk work once a week. Oh, I love these guys. Absolutely, I'll volunteer for them. They might not know. Also, does your organization have a newsletter? I have a newsletter. Well, Hospice Calgary has a newsletter, and then I have a specific volunteer newsletter that goes out to our volunteers to keep them engaged. But what I'm talking about is the newsletter that your organization sends out to maybe your donors or your clients or whoever. Always have something in there about volunteers. Now, I might be biased. I feel like there should be a lot of stuff in those newsletters about volunteers, but I recognize there's other things that need to be in there. So I always make sure that there is a volunteer highlight, or at least a little box in our newsletter that says what volunteer opportunities we have available at this time. And like I mentioned earlier, passion for your organization. Think about it for a second. Would you want to volunteer for your organization? Are the roles attractive? Are you excited about your organization? Are they fun, interesting, challenging? When you speak about the organization or the opportunities available, are you proud to talk about them? Because that is, I think, my secret, which I'm sharing with all of you. It's sales. You want these people to get excited about being part of your team. You want people to be excited to give their time and their skills to your organization. And if they don't think you're having a good time being there, why would they want to be there? I am so proud of the places that I have worked, and I am extremely proud to work at Hospice Calgary. And so that's one of the reasons why I can get volunteers, because I draw people in with that passion, just like I saw with Mustafa earlier. Next slide, please. Okay, there's no role descriptions on your table. I have not snuck into all of your offices and houses, I promise. So our companion program. So our companion program is a very interesting program we have, and I wanted to use this as an exercise. And I don't know if we can do it in the virtual way, but the companion program works out of our Living with Advanced Illness. So people who have been given a terminal diagnosis by their medical team, but they're not necessarily at hospice stage yet, but they're living at home. The doctor has told them that there's nothing else they can do, possibly have given them a timeline, maybe not. But studies show that this demographic can have a very high percentage of isolation and loneliness and depression. So we developed the companion program where we find volunteers to match with clients in that description. And these clients have come to us and asked to be part of this program. And the purpose of this program for the volunteer is that they visit their client once a week, and every visit could be different. One visit could be they're just chatting. Another visit could be they go for a walk. Maybe they bake cookies together. Maybe they watch a show together. Maybe they play cards. It's nothing medical. It's just being someone's friend. So when I gave this presentation in Okotoks, I asked people to give me some ideas of where I could find volunteers for the companion program. So, Michael, can we let people throw out a couple of ideas?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. That's lovely. Okay. So you're trying to find people who are going to visit with sometimes older, sometimes not, but always over the age of 18. People who are at home living with a terminal diagnosis. So does anyone have any ideas besides the ones that I mentioned earlier? Some really creative ideas of where we could find volunteers for that role.
Feel free to pop it into the chat or unmute yourself and just speak out. Don't be too shy.
I would go to church groups, women's auxiliaries. I would reach out to post-secondary education. That's in the area, not particularly in the medical field or whatever, but just post-secondary at all. That's what's coming to my head right at the moment.
Those are excellent examples. Excellent examples. Anyone else? Any ideas?
I would also add some. Hi, it's Holly here from Cali Swish.
Hi.
I would also add, we've had some great success with joining Facebook groups specific to the theme of whatever you're trying to offer, and always leading with the why. Here's how you could make a difference in this realm. Mm-hmm. And the social media groups are extremely responsive and great. And you can target them organically or paid.
Yeah, for sure. That's excellent. We did that a lot at Habitat for Humanity because we were looking for construction volunteers. So we had groups on construction on Facebook.
The community centers and community league groups and some of the sport clubs. For the sport clubs, I had very good experience. Sometimes we used to have some sport activities for the seniors, and lots of families of the seniors, they came, and I got this opportunity to advertise about our programs, and we had many volunteers willing to join the program.
Oh, those are great. Those are wonderful. Yes, community groups. You can make a poster or what have you, and community centers will let you put it up in their like their bulletin board. Some community centers also will let you put an ad in their newsletter at either free or a low cost, or sometimes they're more expensive, which I don't like those ones. Somebody in the chat just said,
but excuse me, Lay, just to address one point, please.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the methodology or mechanism, how we recruit volunteers. And so sometimes the volunteers, they raise question, why should I join these programs? What's the benefits I'm taking out of being a volunteer for this specific organization? So
That
to
is
me,
a
I call
great question.
incentivization. What type of incentives? And incentives is not necessarily to be financial. Sometimes, appreciation letters, certificates, like giving specific rules to volunteers. They want to see themselves as playing constructive role in the organizations they join.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody volunteers for a different reason. Everybody has a different motivation to volunteer their time and the organization they go to, which is so interesting because I'm actually going to cover that in a little bit about why people volunteer and how to get that. So you're jumping ahead, but I like the way you're thinking. Service clubs, senior centers, community associations, these are all wonderful, wonderful organizations. And when you have the role description, you'll know what is a good fit, what person is a good fit, and what person isn't a good fit. Now, when we think about good fit, it's not just about for the organization, it's also for the volunteer. You don't want the volunteer to have a bad experience. If the volunteer has a bad experience, that could be reputational risk. You don't want them going out going, oh yeah, I was going to volunteer for Hospice Calgary, but yeah, nobody was really telling me what I was supposed to do and I didn't really know. You don't want that. Word of mouth. You want them to have such a great experience volunteering for your organization that they tell everybody they know what a great experience they had, and then maybe get more volunteers through their friendship groups. Okay, that was excellent. Very creative. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about retention. So like I mentioned earlier, 1 in 3 volunteers quit within the first year. And retention of volunteers, so keeping them engaged, begins with the first contact. So how it works with me is I receive an email from somebody from our website or from my volunteer connector post saying, I saw this, I'm interested in getting more information. I respond as fast as possible, like I said earlier, and I say, thank you so much for your interest in volunteering with us. I'm so excited to hear from you. We have this great program, and I'm going to attach it to this email, the role description of what you're asking about. You take a look at that. If you'd like to move forward, let me know, and we'll set up an initial phone call. But they're not just getting thank you for reaching out. Here's the role description. It's joy. It's excitement. It's thanking them. So what's attached to the email? The role description, and then the interview. Find out about them. This is what Mustafa was talking about. Why do they want to volunteer? What are they going to get out of volunteering? Why do they want to volunteer for your organization in particular? These are questions that you can ask them. And then if they ask you, well, what am I going to get out of it? Get to know them better. What is motivating them to volunteer? What do they hope to get from volunteering? And what do they hope they can contribute? So let's move on to the next slide because I have some examples. These are 3 of my actual volunteers. So Charles, I continue to volunteer because the other volunteers and staff at Rosedale Hospice are always kind, supportive, and welcoming. There are also training opportunities available and different opportunities to explore. I like the fact that one does not have to do the same thing forever and can move on to other ways of contributing within the same organization. Debbie felt isolated and lonely. She saw our post on Volunteer Connector, reached out and told us she wanted to volunteer to get out of the house and meet new people. She thought it was best for her mental health, and being at Rosedale Hospice helped create a place and family where she always feels welcome. Yvonne, what keeps me coming to hospice every Tuesday is the welcome I get from the volunteer manager, receptionist, and upstairs in the nurse's office. Following an update on the patients, I can go for a walkabout to say hello to them. When asked to assist, it's always with, are you comfortable helping with this issue? I love helping with the staff and patients. And, Mustafa's blocking in my sentence here. And I have learned a lot about compassion and care. So look in those 3 things. The black word that's underlined is all the same. They're welcoming. They feel welcome. It's really important that when a volunteer comes to volunteer for their shift, that you are thrilled to see them, you are thankful they're there, they are valued, and they're appreciated. And then if you look at the red words, each one of these 3 volunteers have different reasons that they wanted to volunteer. I know that about Debbie, for example. I know that Debbie volunteers because she was feeling very isolated and lonely, and she was struggling with her mental health. When Debbie comes to volunteer, I am thrilled to see her. I jump up and down, I give her a hug, and I ask her about her week. I engage with her on a personal level because that's what motivates her. Charles, every time there is an opportunity for training, whether that be through palliative care within Calgary, palliative care within Alberta, or within our own organization, I always make sure Charles knows about the training opportunities because that's important to him. And Yvonne loves helping. We always make sure there's lots of work for Yvonne because she wants to help. She doesn't want to sit around and chat like Debbie does, which I love doing with Debbie, but she wants to help. She wants to be proactive and productive. So I have a file with all of my volunteers with their motivation. So then I always remember how to engage them, how to keep them motivated, so then they don't feel like they are getting bored or not welcome or not happy or not having enough work to do, and then they end up leaving. It seems like something simple and small, but this is the secret to retention. Know your volunteers as people first and volunteers second. Next slide. Okay, so I have worked for incredibly small organizations. I have worked for huge organizations, and not having money to be able to thank your volunteers, you don't need a lot of money to thank your volunteers. Many surveys have been done where the number one way volunteers want to be thanked is literally a thank you. They want to know that they're valued and they're appreciated. Giving them a hug, like Debbie. When Debbie comes in, I always say, "Oh, Debbie, I'm so happy to see you. How are you doing?" That means so much. And again, the more you know your volunteers, the more you know how they're going to feel appreciated. Some people don't want a hug. That's fine. You should know that. Have a good memory. When Yvonne was away for a few weeks, she was helping look after her new grandson. So I made sure to say, "How's your new grandson?" when she came back. Print a card on the office printer with a nice message. Attach a mini chocolate bar, something sweet for someone sweet. That does not cost a lot of money. One of my favorite ones is print a little note with a little mini mint arrow bar that says, "Thank you for your commitment." Cheesiness and silliness always makes people smile. Helping Hands Day, this doesn't cost anything. Distribute handprint cutouts and ask people on your team to write a volunteer name and compliment them on the cutout and tape them on a highly visible area. Social media posts, highlight volunteers in newsletters, make them feel special. And then again, like I mentioned, Google is your friend. Affordable ways to thank your volunteers. If you Google that, you're going to get lots of examples. Next slide. Okay. Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, Leanne. It's Holly again.
Hi,
So
Holly.
I also worked at United Way previously in Markham and volunteered for Habitat and Hospice Calgary earlier in my career. So one of the things that we're running into now is we support pet guardians facing pet cancer. Is that one of our programs is offering a Buddy Connect program where someone facing pet cancer, and we're targeting older adults, 55 to 85 right now, can talk to a volunteer that's been through the process before and can understand what they're feeling. Some of the feedback we've gotten has said that we should have a police check and a vulnerable population check for our volunteers. And in Googling that and searching that and trying to figure out more around that, is that super important or only with a certain aspect of that population group? What has been your experience with this when you're supporting seniors?
Okay. So police checks and vulnerable sector checks are important when there's going to be a vulnerable population. And seniors are considered a vulnerable population. So at Habitat for Humanity, for example, we did not do police checks on our volunteers because our volunteers were never going to be working with a vulnerable population. They weren't working with children, they weren't working with people with disabilities, and they weren't working with seniors. So that wasn't a problem. So it's role-based. At Hospice Calgary, if we have volunteers working with patients who are at end of life, obviously that's a vulnerable population. But if they're going to help with our hike for hospice, they don't need to have a police check. So it's role-based. So don't put it across the board. So you might have some volunteer opportunities that don't require a police check or vulnerable sector check. But if somebody is going to be working one-on-one privately with a senior, I think it's probably better to do a police check. And you do know that they're free for nonprofits now, right? Okay, good. Is that helpful?
Yes. The only issue we found is that we have volunteers coming from, let's say, like Okotoks are right outside of the city of Calgary. And if you get a police check or a vulnerable population check, it has to be in that community.
Yeah, they do. But they can get it done in their community and share it with you, as long as you have a copy of it that it's been done.
So it's travelable across.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I have one.
Hi.
Just actually to just build on what Holly was asking about. You guys said that it's free, the clearance check?
There is a program with Volunteer Alberta that you can apply through their, oh gosh, I can't remember what it's called. VSP program, I think.
Volunteer Alberta, VSP.
Volunteer Alberta. And you have to give them role descriptions. You have to give them how you measure risk for each role.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they do is if they approve you, they send you, oh, thank you, Adrienne.
Oh, thank you.
There it is.
Okay. I'll just think, yeah, that's awesome.
Just do that. Yeah, it's great. And so it would be, and they give you a code. So like for me, for example, the code for companion program is 029. And so when I fill out a police check, I put 029 and then it goes through and I don't get charged and the volunteer does not get charged.
Oh, so you're actually putting the clearance through.
Yeah, because, well, I don't know if it's different outside Calgary, but in Calgary, it's all done online for nonprofits now. I just have to put their name, their email address, and the code. And then I click a button that says email, and then that email is sent to the volunteer to answer a few questions, and then it gets processed.
It could be, the process may be a little bit different because we're dealing with the RCMP here.
It could be
as opposed to the Calgary Police Service.
Yeah. Before it was online, I had to write a letter that was that this person is is applying to volunteer for this role. I had to put the code in there and I had to put my contact information in the email, and the volunteer would bring that into the police station.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look into it anyway. Because right now some of them have to, we do them, but we're paying for them right now. So if there's a way that we don't have to pay for them, or that might be something I have to look for funding for.
Yeah, no, you should be able. I don't know if it's different with RCMP though, but look into it for sure. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
We have time for one more question if anybody has a burning question they'd like to ask Leanne.
Okay, maybe not.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leanne. I really appreciate your time this afternoon and some real value in some of those exact steps that you can take. And I know my previous work was with agency in Calgary, and they had a huge volunteer pool. And I know the greatest success for that program was a recognition for volunteers. And even as a staff person helping at a casino, or my partner coming out to help, it was a card, a little package of tea in there. And just like a little corny saying in there, but it's so heartwarming. And those are the things that you really feel valued with. So thank you so much, Leanne. Really appreciate it.
Can I have a quick question, please? Just a small one.
Sure.
For sure.
Yes, Lee. Do you put in your programs or projects in your budget some of the honorarium that you can pay the volunteers as part of the incentives to keep them on the programs for longer time?
I do have a budget line with honorarium. I don't use it necessarily. I mean, I have a budget line for volunteer appreciation, which is a whole other thing. That's where we get the like tea and thank you cards and that kind of stuff. But honorarium, I normally use when I bring people in to train. So if I have somebody coming in to train the volunteers on something specific, I like to give them an honorarium if I can. So I don't have a very big one and I haven't used it this year yet, but honorariums are used for when I bring in specialists to train volunteers. I think a good example is actually dementia. We brought in, I'm working on bringing in a specialist who works with seniors with dementia, because a lot of our patients at the hospice and some of our companion program patients are struggling with dementia. And so I want to bring in a specialist to train our volunteers about certain aspects of that. So that would be an example of an honorarium. If somebody is a specialist or an expert on it, I would want to give them an honorarium for training our volunteers.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. And if folks have other questions, I think we'll be able to share Leanne's contact after this. So you can reach out to her directly and keep that collaboration going. And why reinvent the wheel when Leanne has a whole semi-truck full of wheels that we can use. So again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
So that brings us to the end of our day. And so I'm just going to skip that, and I'm going to have Stephanie just post in the chat a link to the survey. It's really important for us to receive feedback on how the day went, what you liked, what you'd like to maybe see more of, and maybe some ways for improvement. So please do take the time to complete the survey. We look at every single one, and even throughout the regional gathering season, from our first gathering, we were already adjusting and shifting to make sure we're meeting the needs of the folks we serve. So a little bit too before we go. So what do we have to offer? So there's a whole bunch of stuff, more than just regional gatherings, that Healthy Aging is able to offer. So we have Core Alberta, which is a free centralized knowledge and learning hub. Part of Core, we have some amazing groups with really specific areas of interest that folks can jump into, including men's sheds, as we've heard from today, as well as an interagency for newcomer and immigrant serving organizations. So some really cool stuff embedded within Core. Of course, we're always working around communication, collaboration with related sectors and policymakers on behalf of the CBSS sector, securing and facilitating financial investment in the sector. So you may have heard of a nice big announcement from the ministry around a continued investment into community and home support. So that's through our engagement with all of you and us being able to amplify your voice to those folks. Grassroots community-driven conversations that amplify those voices and strengthen capacity on ground through relationship and community building. And of course, our annual regional gatherings where we support peer-to-peer learning. We will have our provincial summit coming up next year. So do stay tuned for some announcements around that and some excitement. I just see from Kathy on the survey, which location should we pick? Virtual isn't an option. That's a really good question that I'm not too sure. Stephanie, do you have an idea
I
around
think we're
that?
gonna edit the survey and we'll send it out with the slides. So don't worry about completing the survey right now.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah, so we'll hold off. We'll make sure that we have a virtual option on the survey. And so when we send out the recording of today's presentation, as well as resources, we'll include the survey there. And then that way you can click on the virtual option, and then the survey will be made to reflect today's day. So again, thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Like I said, survey and PowerPoint slides will be sent out, as well as a recording. You're always welcome to set up a meeting with your regional community developer to talk about how we can support your work. And please do stay connected. So again, thank you, everybody. Save the date, October 6th to 9th, 2025, Healthy Aging Alberta Summit. We're so excited. It was a huge hit last year. I know that's why I'm in this role, as I was so impressed with Healthy Aging during that. The best way to reach out to your regional community developer is through probably just by emailing info@healthyagingalberta.ca. Let them know which community you are in, and then we'll be able to help make that connection for you.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Enjoy.